This is it. This is the church. A second look. We first encounter Nimrod in Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 and 9. It reads, Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. That's in Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 and 9. This is the passage where we first encounter this mighty hunter called Nimrod. Babylon was established by Nimrod, and Nimrod is said to be a mighty hunter and a ruler. Nimrod, he is the son of Cush, and he is the grandson of Ham, and he is the great-grandson of Noah. And many believe that Nimrod was a giant, one of the so-called Nephilims. But nonetheless, Nimrod, he was a hunter of the souls of men. He gathered many, many men. He hunted down many men all throughout the Mesopotamian area and beyond that region as well. He was a hunter of souls, the souls of men. He gathered these men and placed them on the plains of Shinar, and Shinar is Babylon. Nimrod, he was the world's first conqueror, the first to subdue many nations and rule over them at the same time. He was the world's first one world ruler. He was the world's first established one world government. And in this one world government that Nimrod established, there was a one world religion. All of this and much more was established first by Nimrod. Nimrod, he had a vast army of men, the men that he hunted down. He had these men at his disposal. And while he continued hunting and enslaving men, his kingdom continued growing, reaching vast area of land all throughout the Mesopotamian area. And it is during this time that Nimrod, he decided to build a tower, the tower that would reach the heavens. Nimrod is Sargon, and Sargon is Nimrod. The following evidences, they show unquestionably that Nimrod is Sargon. The first piece of evidence that shows that Nimrod is Sargon is the fact that Nimrod and Sargon both came from the same geographical region. Nimrod's origin is in Cush. Sargon's origin is in Kish, spelled Kish, and Nimrod's origin, Cush, is spelled Cush, and both of these are the same region. Another piece of evidence that shows that Nimrod is Sargon is the Sumerian king's list. In this Sumerian king's list, there is the mentioning of Kish being the first city, the first established city of kingship of a kingdom after the flood. This happened after the flood. Now this is mentioned in the Sumerian king's list, and this is what the scriptures says about Nimrod. After the flood, Nimrod, he began establishing his kingdoms, and he began in Shinar. Shinar is Babylon, and these regions are Cush. The third piece of evidence that shows that Nimrod is Sargon is that they made improvements on the city of Akkad. Nimrod, he improved the city of Akkad and made it a prominent city. Sargon did the same. He improved the city of Akkad and made it a prominent city. Another piece of evidence that shows that Nimrod and Sargon are the same is that both of these men, they initiated building projects in Assyria. Nimrod initiated building projects in Assyria, and Sargon initiated building projects in Assyria. Another piece of evidence that shows that Nimrod is Sargon is the archaeological excavations that were done in ancient Mesopotamia. These excavations, they show, without a doubt, unquestionably, that Nimrod, his identity is Sargon. Semiramis. Semiramis was a Babylonian princess. Her name is Semiramis, also known as Semiramis. She was a Babylonian woman on the Assyrian throne, and that was something that has never been done before. Semiramis, she married Onnes and Ninus. Now Ninus, he was a king of Assyria. And when he died, Semiramis, she took over as king of Assyria. The Greeks, they call Semiramis, they call her Semiramis. Semiramis is the Greek name of this historical person, Semiramis. Ninus was the husband of Semiramis, but he died. But Ninus is said to be Nimrod, and this information, it is found in the Greek histories called Wickedness. And in this text called Wickedness, this is where we find Nimrod equated with the Assyrian king Ninus, and also in the homilies, chapter 9, verses 46, Nimrod, he is equated with Zoroaster. This is information that has been kept hidden. The true identity of Nimrod has been kept hidden, and that it is done for the sole purpose of causing confusion, hiding the truth, keeping it from the original black Jews. The type of government that Nimrod established was a monarchy. It was one person ruling all people. A monarchy, a one world government. There are many things that were going on in Babylon, and there's a reason why the scriptures, the book of Revelations, equate fornication with Babylon. It equates fornication with Circe. In Revelation chapter 17, the woman that rides the beast, fornication is embedded in her being. And there's a reason behind that. Because there were a lot of wicked, devious practices that were going on in Babylon. The whole notion and idea of sexual behavior in Babylon was one where the Babylonians, they were obsessed with sex. Sex was a religious experience for the ancient Babylonians, and it didn't matter whether the participants were old, poor, rich, low down, or any other thing. That was all irrelevant. As long as you participated in the sexual act of fornication. The Babylonians, they considered abstinence a sin. If you were living in Babylon and you refused to participate in fornication, that was a sin, and it was punishable by death. This ritual of sexual, illicit, deviant sexual behavior, it became a ritual, a sacred prostitution ritual. And as a result, Babylon had many temple prostitutes. And the temple prostitutes, they ensured the prosperity of Babylonian society. Sex was a truly religious experience for the ancient Babylonians. And again, it was a sin to turn down sex in Babylon. Every Babylonian woman was sent to the temple of Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. The woman was sent to the temple to have sex with a complete stranger, and the first man to throw a coin in the woman's lap, that man was the first to have sex with a woman. And it didn't matter how the man looked. It didn't matter his social status, rich or poor, old and unhealthy. All of that was irrelevant. It was the duty of the woman to please him. Now the woman's duty is done to the goddess Ishtar. And these women that were sent to the temple, if a man did not throw any coin in her lap, she had to remain at the temple no matter how long it took. If it took a year for a man to throw a coin in her lap, she had to remain at the temple a year until it happened. And once it happened, she had to please Ishtar by having sex with a complete stranger. And once her duties are fulfilled, then and only then could she go home to her husband and family. The ancient Babylonians, they were not shy about fornication. They would have sex, they would have fornication everywhere, under any conditions. Fornication, it was a religious experience to the ancient Babylonians. And again, it was a sin to turn down fornication. The Babylonians saw homosexuality as something normal and attached no social stigma to men taking the female role. The Babylonian men, they brought their wives through auctioning on a marriage market. Once a year, the Babylonian men would go to these marriage markets to buy their wives. The bidding would start with the most beautiful woman. And if it is the case that this woman had already had sex with some other man, then it was the right of the man that is buying her to have sex with the woman or the wife of the man who is selling her. And this rule, this weird, wicked, and evil rule, it is a part of the Hammurabi Code. And Hammurabi, he was an Amorite king of Babylon. The ancient Babylonians, they had their own version of illicit pornographic material. They had mass-manufactured clay tablets with very explicit sexual positions. And these tablets, they were accessible to men, women, and children. Chastity, abstinence, these values, these moral values were considered sin in Babylon. To abstain from sex is a sin. To abstain from fornication is a sin, punishable by death. And marriage in Babylon was not considered a marriage until you fornicated. And the woman had to become pregnant. When that had happened, that is the only time when a marriage was considered a real marriage in Babylon. And it's because of these deviant practices and deviant laws of Babylon that we find in the book of Revelations the association of fornication with the woman that rides the beast. Babylon was a wicked, wicked kingdom that spread its wickedness through all the other nations, to all people. word Babylon is from Babel. And there is a certain meaning for the word Babel. Babel means house of Baal. But there's something else that is attached to the meaning of Babel. And we find this meaning in Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. And the meaning is, it is the reason why the Most High scattered the people all on the face of the earth. And this meaning is kept hidden. But in Genesis chapter 11, verse 9, it reads, "Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth." Now this passage, it is constructed awkwardly, and that is not the proper structure, rendering, and reading of this passage. Now this verse, it properly reads this way. It should read, "This is why it is called Babel." And Babel, again, it means the house of Baal. "This is why it is called Babel, because the people practiced confusion, so God scattered them." Let me read it again. The verse properly reads, "This is why it is called Babel, because the people practiced confusion, so God scattered them." Now the reason for this rendering is based on the Hebrew word for confound. Confound. The Hebrew word for confound is the word tabel. And tabel, that means mixing of species and bestiality. Tabel means mixing of species and bestiality. Now, when we put this understanding, this practice that was going on in Babylon, when we put this into this text, into this verse, the verse tends to read this way. "This is why it is called Babel, because the people practice confusion. They practice mixing of species and bestiality. And as a result, God scattered them." But the mixing of species and bestiality, that is what was going on in Babylon. Not only was it just going on, it was the practice of Babylon. It was a routine, a ritual, a daily practice of mixing of species and bestiality. And we learn from the book of Jasher, and Enoch, that the fallen angels, one of the things they taught the men is the mixing of species. And it is known that bestiality originated with the fallen angels, not with the men. The fallen angels taught them bestiality as well. Now, this behavior of mixing of species and bestiality, this is embedded in the name Babel, in the meaning of Babel, and it actually gives the proper meaning of Babel. Babel means house of Baal, but what is in the house? What was going on in that house? One of the things that was going on in the house that gives it Babel its meaning is the mixing of species and bestiality. And so the word Babel, which is Babylon, it means house of Baal, and what was going on in that house is the mixing of species and bestiality. And these are just a few of the practices that was going on in Baal worship. So mixing of species and bestiality, they are embedded in the meaning of Baal. And again, the mixing of species and bestiality They are embedded in the meaning of Baal, and we are told this from the opening of the verse. We are told that this is the reason it is called Babel, because of the mixing of species and bestiality. That is the reason why it is called Babel, why it is called confusion. Now, confusion, the Hebrew word tabel, that is translated confusion, it does not mean the modern English definition of confusion, of the inability to make a decision. Not that. It doesn't mean that type of confusion. Confusion, tabel, means to take one species and combine it with another species. That's confusion. Taking one species and combining it with another species. That species, the outcome is going to be confused because it is not one species. It is a combination of two different species. And that is why chapter 9, verse 11, that's why it opens with the saying, therefore is the name of it called Babel, because of the confusion. And this is not an intellectual decision-making confusion. This is a mixing of species and bestiality. And so this is the reason why it is called Babel, Babylon. And that is the meaning of Babylon. Babel is the house of Baal, but in that house, the foundation, the meaning of it, is mixing of species and bestiality. And bestiality is one form of deviant sexual behavior. And so deviant sexual behavior is embedded in the meaning of Babylon. Ashtoreth. This is another name of the goddess Circe. It is another name that is associated with Circe. Ashtoreth was a moon goddess of the Canaanites and associated with Baal, the sun god. This is Circe and Ashtoreth, and there are going to be a whole lot of other names that we're going to take a look at. All of these names refer to the same goddess. And these names, referring to the same goddess, they were in circulation and usage at different time periods by different groups of people. And with each name, even though it refers to the same goddess, each name ascribes the same characteristics, but with a little bit of difference. Some goddesses have more power, some have less, some have more influence, some have less influence, and the like. But Ashtoreth, this is a goddess that is mentioned in Scripture. And we find Ashtoreth in Judges, in 1 Samuel, in Jeremiah, 1 Kings. And this goddess, she is called the Queen of Heaven. And that phrase, Queen of Heaven, is found in Scripture in Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 25. The phrase Queen of Heaven was a phrase that was a common phrase, commonly known in the Mesopotamian era, and it was applied to many of these goddesses. And the Queen of Heaven still exists today in 2022. She is still worshipped, and she is worshipped in the form of Mary. Mary, the one that we find in the Gospels, in the New Testament, the Roman Catholic Mary. That Mary is called Queen of Heaven. Ashtoreth, Circe, and all the other names that were given to this goddess. Semiramis was one of the names. This goddess found her way all the way to 20 22, still being worshipped, and she has taken on the form of Mary, the one of the Roman Catholic, Mary in that religion, the one in the Gospels. She's the Queen of Heaven. Mary, the so-called mother of Jesus, is called Queen of Heaven in Roman Catholicism, and the other names associated with Circe, associated with Semiramis, associated with Mary, associated with Ashtoreth, Ishtar, and the like, these are just various names of the same goddess, the great whore Babylon, heavenly prostitute, mother of harlots, Hard, and Hora, Aphrodite, and Aphrodite is in Greece, Astarte or Ashtaroth in Canaan, Ishtarah, Ernini, Ainana, Anunit, and Astarte again, Esther, Aster, Aparit, Amonat, Lilith, Artemis, Diana, and Semiramis. These are all the same goddess, just up under different names. And today, Semiramis, Diana, Inanna, Lilith, Circe, Ishtar, these are different names of the same goddess. Today her name is Mary, the Mother of Heaven. Mary, the Queen of Heaven. That is the current name that has been used by the Roman Catholic Church. That name is applied to this old deity, well, false deity, false goddess, Ashtaroth or Ishtar, and the Greeks call her Semiramis. But what is the meaning of the name Nimrod? Nimrod is Hebrew. It is Ivri. It is the Hebrew name for this character, this figure that lived, that started the kingdom, the empire of Babylon, the first ruling empire of Babylon, a world power. What is his name, the meaning of his name? And this is all in accordance to the Hebrew, to the Ivri. Other nations, other surrounding nations, they called Nimrod by other names. But in Ivri, Nimrod has been falsely and erroneously defined. Many scholars, they define Nimrod as rebel, and that is incorrect. Strong's give the same definition for Nimrod as rebel, R-E-B-E-L, rebel, and that is wrong. That's not the meaning of the Hebrew word Nimrod. To get the meaning of the Hebrew word Nimrod, we have to look at the every letters that make up the Hebrew name Nimrod. And in Ivri is Hebrew. In Ivri, the Hebrew word Nimrod is going to be the N, M-R-D. You remove the vowels. It's the N-M-R-D. And each of these letters convey a certain meaning. And we're going to see that it is clear that Nimrod does not mean rebel. It does not refer to in any way rebel. So looking at the Ivri letters of Nimrod, we get the N. The N is the Nun, and that's a picture of a seed. And it gives the meaning of seed, continue, hear, and son. And that's every letter is the M, Mim. That's the picture of water. And it gives the meaning of water, chaos, mighty, and blood. The next letter is the R, the Resh. And that gives the pictograph of head. The meaning is head, first, top, and beginning. The next every letter is the D, the every Dalet, The pictograph of that is the door, and the meaning is move, hang, and entrance. And when we put these letters together, they will give us the correct meaning of the Hebrew word Nimrod. Nimrod does not mean rebel. Nimrod properly means, first of all, a mighty ruler. That's the first instance. Nimrod properly means, and it refers to mighty ruler. In this part, it is seen in the every letter Resh and Mem. Nimrod, he ruled many people and nations. This is seen in the every letter Nun. The reference is to seed, and seed refers to many people. And Mem, the reference is to water and blood, where both refer to many people. So from the Nun and the Mem, the combining conjunction of Nun and Mem gives a stress and emphasis on a multitude of people. You see, Nun already refers to seed, offspring, and offspring is always people. Whether that's a nation or whatever the amount or quantity of people it is, it refers to a sea of people, many people. That's Nun. Mem does the same thing with the water. Water could be the literal water or water referring to a sea of people, and then you add the blood. Blood means the literal blood or lineage. So there's a double emphasis, a double stressing on the quantity of people that Nimrod was ruling that puts him as a world ruler. And his might is seen in the fact that he ruled many people. And as we add the other letters, looking at the Resh is going to refer to his power, his ability to rule. And then the Delet. When we add the Delet lets us know that Nimrod was the first ruler of this kind. After him, and only after Nimrod, did other nations come on the scene in the same manner. Nimrod was the first, and this is stressed in Scripture, that the beginning of his kingdoms was Babel, and the rest of the kingdoms list. The Scripture also states that he was a mighty hunter. Nimrod. He was the first of that, the first of his kind, to be a mighty ruler, a ruler of souls, a ruler of people, of nations. And after Nimrod, and only after Nimrod, do we find other nations coming on the scene in the same manner as ruler of many people, of nations, as a world power. So Nimrod was first, and that is the Delet. He is the doorway of rulership for many other nations to pattern themselves after the kingship that he established, that Nimrod established himself. So the proper meaning of Nimrod, the correct meaning of Nimrod, is the first ruler of nations. First ruler of nations, or the first to rule many people. The first to rule many people. The first, the phrase, the first, that phrase is important. And added to that phrase is another phrase, rule many people. So those two phrases, the first and then rule many people, gives the correct meaning of Nimrod. He is the first of his kind to rule many people, many nations of people. That is the meaning of Nimrod. Now that we have an understanding of ancient Babylon and understanding of what was going on in ancient Babylon, now we can proceed to the book of Revelations and take a look at Circe, taking a second look at Circe, because Circe is connected to Babylon. Circe is Mystery Babylon, and it is said that Babylon will come again. Within Circe, within all churches today, there are three main offices. Three main offices in all churches today. These offices, they are the priest, deacon, and bishop. And in each office, there is something sinister that lies behind each office that is the foundation and the origin of each office. But the common notion of each office, the common notion of the priest, is that the priests, they are primarily responsible for the spiritual oversight of the congregation. And this oversight, it includes attending to the sound teaching within the church, ensuring that members are nurtured through Scripture. The priests are supposed to be responsible for the sacraments, worship, and prayer, and guiding the congregation. But these are lies. These are not the truth. These things have absolutely nothing to do with the priests. The English word priest, it comes from the Greek word hieros, spelled H-I-E-R-E-U-S, hieros. Hieros has a root word to it, which is eros, spelled H-I-E-R-O-S. And hieros has absolutely nothing to do with the English meaning of priest. Hieros means that the priest is connected to the gods, and the priest is connected to the temple that the gods reside in. The first thing that we should notice is that this is a Greek word. Hieros is a Greek word, and being such, it is defined according to the mystery religion of Greece. The priest does service to the god, and that service is done in the temple that the god resides in. So whatever god that may be within the pantheon of God, the priest is connected to that god. And there's a phrase in the mystery religion, the eros gamos. That means that the priest is married to the god. The connectedness is in a form of a marriage to the god. And this marriage to the god consists of the priest being married to the temple of the god as well. And this is where we get the phrase, this is where the Roman Catholics get the phrase, married to the church. This is the reason why priests and nuns in the Roman Catholic Church, they supposedly remain celibate, and they say they are married to the church. This whole concept is based on the mystery religion of Babylon and of Greece. Greece get their mystery religion from Babylon. And the word hieros, which has its root word eros, that means belonging to the god and belonging to the temple of the god. And that is the evil, the wickedness that lies behind and within the priesthood of all churches of Circe. And the priesthood, it was founded by Constantine in 325 AD. The next office is the deacon. And within this office, the common belief is, among many people today in churches, the common belief of the office of the deacon is that the deacon is responsible for mission involvement, disaster response, volunteer service opportunities, hunger advocacy, relief efforts, individual and family concern, stewardship, education, and congregational giving. But all these are lies, just like the office of the priest. These are lies, these are deceptions. This is a facade that the deacon, the office of the deacon within Circe, is hiding behind these euphemistic terms. But none of them are true. The office of the deacon itself, that is the Greek word diakonos. Diakonos is a conjunction, a combining of two words, of two Greek false gods in the mystery religion. The first god is Dia, spelled D-I-A. And the false goddess Dia, her name is Dia, spelled D-E-A-D-I-A. That is a false god in the mystery religion. The next word in diakonos is konos. And konos is the Greek word for cone. It is an inverted cone. And when it's inverted, it takes the shape of a triangle. And this false god, Konos, is said to be on the top, the apex of the triangle, and he oversees all Greek life. There's the false god, Konos, within the mystery religion of Greece. And so the false god Dia, along with the false god Konos, they are combined together. And the deacon, these false gods, they have a priest. The deacon refers to the false god, and all false gods have priests. And these priests are in servitude to Dia and to Konos. And the priests serve these gods, both of these gods, among others, in the temple that these gods reside in. This is the sinisterness, the evilness, the wickedness that lies within deacon. And deacon is in Circe. The next office, that is the bishop. We're going back to the deacon. The deacon office was founded by Constantine in 326 AD. The office of the bishop is going to take on the same thing as the other two offices. It's going to reference a false god of the mystery religion of Greece and ultimately the mystery religion of Babylon. Now, the common meaning or the common understanding of bishop is that the bishop is responsible for the preaching and teaching. The bishop is responsible for the administering of sacraments, caring for the members of the congregation, building up and equipping the church for its ministry to the world. But all of this is a lie. The bishop and his office have absolutely nothing to do with these things. The office of the bishop, it is in refers to, and it is connected to false gods of the Greek pantheon, the mystery religions. The Greek word for bishop is episkope. This is where we get the English word Episcopalian. And the Greek word, it is made up of two words. It is made up of epi, which is spelled E-P-I, which means on. And the next word is scopio, spelled S-K-O-P-E-O. Scopio has a root word, scopos. And scopos, that refers to a false god. Scopos carries the meaning of a watchman, a watchtower, a goal, a mark aimed at. And Scopios is giving the meaning and reference to the false goddess Artemis. Artemis, one of the symbols of Artemis is the bow and arrow. And one of the powers of Artemis is that she possesses perfect aim with the bow, always hitting her mark, never missing. And that is the meaning of Scopus. Scopus is the meaning of this false god Artemis. Artemis is the daughter of Zeus, and she is said to be the twin sister of Apollo. Thus the bishop is associated with the false goddess Artemis. And all three offices of every church priest, deacon, and bishop, are built on and constructed upon the mystery religions of Babylon and Greece. Within the church, there are constantly stained glass windows called mosaic, and the public, they are told that these stained glass windows, they represent different biblical acts and the apostles, the patriots, and biblical events that occurred in time past. But that is not the truth. The stained glass window, the mosaic, it has its origin in paganism, and it was Constantine during his beginnings of church architecture. Constantine was a pagan. He borrowed heavily from paganism. One of the things that he borrowed was the mosaic, the stained glass window. Within paganism, the different colors of the stained glass windows, they represent the sun god. These windows, they were a symbol of the magnificent glory of the sun. And the sun god is Satan. In Babylon and Babylonian mystery religion, the sun is also a representation of Nimrod and Semiramis. Another part of Circe is the steeple. Steeples are one element that is found on many churches. All churches do not have them, but the ancient, the old ones, they have steeples. The steeples are always on the outside of the building, on the roof. These steeples, they represent the obelisk, and it is a phallic symbol of the male sex organ. And the steeple, the obelisk, they were used in worship of the sun god. And again, the sun god is Satan. The steeple, they are deeply rooted in pagan worship. They are found on every continent across the globe. These steeples are the obelisks, and the obelisks in scripture are called Asherah. Asherah, spelled A-S-H-E-R-A-H, Asherah. Asherah is mentioned in scripture in the usage of the word grooves. Grooves, spelled G-R-O-V-E-S, grooves. And the Most High, he was always at anger at the Hebrews abandoning him and constructing grooves, which are the Asherah, which is the obelisk, constructing these grooves in complete objection of the Most High as their God, constructing grooves and thereby submitting themselves to the sun god. But the obelisk, it is in scripture. The Hebrew word is Asherah, but in scripture it used the word grooves to refer to the obelisk. The obelisk is a phallic symbol, and it is connected to the Babylonian mystery religion. And that means it is connected to Nimrod and Semiramis. Asherah, that is a Hebrew word that refers to the false goddess Astarte, which Astarte is Ishtar, and it also refers to the false goddess Ashtaroth, which is the Canaanite goddess, and these are just different names of the same false god, and that false god is Semiramis. Each office of the church of Circe, the priest, the deacon, and the bishop, each of these offices, they are held, they were instilled, they were constructed and placed by Constantine in honor of the Babylonian god and goddess, Nimrod and Semiramis. Artemis, Astarte, Dia, and the rest are just different names of the same false goddess, Semiramis. And Semiramis is queen of heaven. And Semiramis, she deified her husband Nimrod when he died. All of this as part of the Babylonian mystery religion. So the name that's written on the forehead of the woman, the first one is the mystery Babylon. The mystery religions, they all were a part of a diverse religious movement that involved the worship of pagan deities from Babylon, from Egypt, from Greece, Persia, Assyria, Syria, Canaanite, and many other cultures, especially those in the Mesopotamian area. Mystery religions were so named because they consisted strictly of secret cults characterized by elaborate initiation rituals and religious ceremonies, and these things were only known to those who were admitted to the group. The most well-known mystery religion to emerge was the Babylonian cult of Nimrod and Semiramis, and the others that followed were the Greek cults of Demeter, the Lucinian, and Dionysus. In the Phrygian religion, there was the Phrygian cult of Cybele. And Cybele, she is the great mother of the gods. All of these titles are titles that will ultimately lead to Semiramis, the Queen of Heaven. And also in the Phrygian cult was the cult of Attis. In Syria, there was the cult of Adonis. And in Egypt, there's the cult of Isis and Osiris. And in Persia, there's the cult of Mithras. But thanks be to the Most High in giving us a clue with the mentioning of Mystery Babylon. And with this clue, we now can gather correct information, thereby gaining correct understanding of what is written in the book of Revelations. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 3, it reads, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Now, when we look at this verse, the phrase scarlet-colored beast, this phrase, this is another clue here. This is reference to Babylon. The color of the beast is said to be scarlet, and scarlet is a red color. And red in Babylonian mystery religion is symbolic of fire, and fire represents Nimrod. The scarlet-colored beast and Nimrod are Babylon. In Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 14, it reads, "The images of the Chaldeans," and the Chaldeans are Babylonians. The Chaldeans, they are the southern part of Babylon, where Sumer and Chaldea resided in the southern part. The northern part was Akkad, called Uggad. But the images of the Chaldeans are portrayed with vermilion. That's in Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 14. The images of the Chaldeans are portrayed with vermilion. Vermilion is a reddish color. So the whole color is backed up by Scripture. The color red is backed up by Scripture. We find this in Revelation and in Ezekiel. And in both passages, the color red, the vermilion, and the scarlet are symbolic of fire. And in Babylonian religion, fire represents Nimrod. So the vermilion color represents Nimrod, the fire and the serpent worship of the Babylonian mystery system. In the priesthood of Greece, in the mystery religion of the Great Mother, there was a large group of priests that were eunuchs who wore female clothing. This cross-dressing is from Babylon. It is the mixing of species. The trans community of today represents the Baphomet, and the Baphomet is male and female, and this is called mixing of species, which was taught by the fallen angels. The mixing of species was taught by the fallen angels, and this we find in the book of Jasher, and as well in Enoch. The Baphomet is not a full male, and it is not a full female. It is mixed with male and female. This is exactly what the trans community of today is. It is a wickedness of mixing in honor of Baphomet. Baphomet has its origin in Babylon, and it is Baal worship. Baal, the word Baal is from Babel, and Babel means mixing of species and bestiality. And this is forbidden by the Most High. Nimrod, he founded Babylon, and the word Babylon is the Greek version of the Hebrew name Babel. Nimrod also founded Nineveh, and some believe that the Hanging Gardens were in Nineveh, not in Babylon. But nonetheless, Nimrod is known in ancient history under the name Ninus, spelled N-I-N-U-S, Ninus. Ninus, he was a king of Assyria, and Ninus is recorded as being the first king of Babylon. Now, from this information, we see the similarity between the name Ninus and Nineveh. Nimrod was called Ninus. It is said that Nimrod, he founded Nineveh, and that is in Scripture. And we see the similarity between the names of Nineveh and Ninus. And both of these are Nimrod. The word Ninus comes from the Hebrew word Nin, spelled N-I-N, which means a son. And this leads us to the Babylonian worship of Nimrod as a son of his wife, Semiramis. This was the wicked belief of the Babylonian mystery religion that Nimrod was the wife of Semiramis and at the same time became her son. He became her son only after the death of Nimrod. After he died, Semiramis deified him to the state of the sun god. There was a sun god, S-U-N, and he became her son, S-O-N, while remaining as her husband. It is a twisted belief, a wicked belief, but nonetheless, that is the Babylonian mystery religion. That's one of their tenets. And along with this Babylonian mystery religion, all other mystery religions follow and are constructed upon the Babylonian mystery religion. The Egyptians, they copied this religious belief of Nimrod and Semiramis. They copied it and changed the names to Osiris and Isis. Osiris is Nimrod and Isis is Semiramis. Nimrod, he is attributed with introducing the worship of the sun. This includes the worship of fire, since fire was considered to be the earthly representation of the sun. The sun god, which is Satan, the sun god was worshipped under the name Baal. Thus Nimrod, he led a great rebellion against the Most High. Nimrod, he was killed, and after his death, He was deified. He was made a false god by his wife Semiramis. And we are told in the book of Jasher, chapter 27, verses 1 to 10, we're told that Esau, he is the one who killed Nimrod. The book of Revelation says the woman rides a beast, and the book of Revelation gives us the geographical location of the woman being set on 7 hills. We are told that the beast that once was, now is not, and yet will come again. This let us know that it is a reference to the Babylonian Empire. It is not a reference to Rome, because Rome never existed. Revelation goes on to say that it will come again. Revelation lets us know that this is a future empire. It's not an empire that existed in the 1st century AD, and it is not an empire that exists today. This beast is a future empire, but this empire, it is being constructed. It is not finished. It is not in existence, but it is being constructed today. With Revelations, with the mentioning and the revelation of the mystery religion of Babylon, we do have good information that the beast is the Babylonian Empire. But the Babylon that is coming, this Babylon will be different from the ancient Babylon of the past. The future Babylon comes out of the abyss, and the abyss is where devils and demons are chained up. This means the future Babylon will be ruled by Satan himself, and we see this in the book of Revelations. The geographical location of the beast is in Iraq, in the Middle East. This is the location where this beast of Revelation chapter 17, this is the location in Southwest Asia called Middle East. That is the abyss. And there are many other locations of the abyss, but that is the location that the Babylonian beast will arise and currently is being constructed today. Within this area, within the Middle East, Southwest Asia, this land area is the location of the fallen angels, where beings that are not human dwell. This is the location where the interbreeding first took place, in the so-called Middle East, Southwest Asia area. And in this area, there is not only a copy of the real Jerusalem and Israel, there is also under construction a copy of the real Babylonian Empire. This copy is currently being put together, currently being built. It is under construction. Babylon is going to be rebuilt, and according to Revelation, it will come again. It is the empire that once was. It is the empire that currently is not. It's not in existence yet. It is the empire that will come again. And this is according to Scripture, to the book of Revelation, chapter 17. Babylon is said to be rebuilt, and it's going to be rebuilt in the Middle East. Saddam Hussein, he attempted to rebuild Babylon, but he was interrupted with the Gulf War, and much of his rebuilding was destroyed, and afterwards he was put to death. But thanks to the WMF, the World Monuments Fund, The rebuilding of Babylon has restarted in 2010, and it is currently still going on. The World Monuments Fund is dedicated to the preservation of historic architecture and cultural heritage sites around the world. This agency, this organization, it was founded in 1965, and the WMF, the World Monuments Fund, it is headquartered in New York. And that's interesting because New York, one of the names of New York is Babylon. The World Monuments Fund, it is a part of the UN, the United Nations, and the biggest contributor to the project of rebuilding Babylon is the United States. This also means that the Vatican is behind the project because the United States is the military arm of the Vatican and Great Britain. And the United States is one of the 3 city-states. The other 2 is the Vatican. The other 2 are the Vatican and Great Britain. The Vatican, Great Britain, and Washington, D.C., those are called 3 city-states, and they work together. These 3 entities rule the world. And it is these 3 entities, they are behind the rebuilding of Babylon. They are behind the World Monuments Fund, major contributors in making sure that Babylon gets rebuilt. And again, Babylon is currently under construction. It is currently being rebuilt. Knowing that the beast is Babylon makes us clear what the image of the beast will be. The image of the beast is going to be Babylon itself. Any parts of Babylon will be the image. And the image such as the Ishtar Gate. And the Ishtar Gate, it is currently in many museums. A copy of the Ishtar Gate is spread out in several museums. One of the first museums it was in, that it still is in, is the Berlin Museum in Germany. The Ishtar Gate, the real Ishtar Gate, that gate, along with many other structures of the real Babylon, located in Africa, in Namibia, Southwest Africa, many of those structures were stolen. They were hijacked and removed and moved to the Middle East. The structures such as the Ishtar Gate and the many temples were moved and removed to the Middle East. Just as the obelisk, the Egyptian obelisk, just as they were stolen, the entire obelisk was stolen and placed in 3 locations: in the Vatican City, in the Crown, in London, the Crown, and the 3rd one was placed in Washington, D.C. Just as these 3 Egyptian artifacts that rightly belong to Africa, just as they were stolen and moved to the land of the fallen angels, the land of the Caucasians, so have the remains of Babylon been uprooted, hijacked, and stolen and placed in the Middle East. And one of the artifacts that was placed in the Middle East is the Ishtar Gate, among others. And copies of the Ishtar Gate were constructed, and they are placed in many museums across the world. Within China, the Iraqi embassy, one of the Iraqi embassy is located in China, and within China, within this embassy, is an Ishtar Gate. An image of the Ishtar Gate that was recreated and placed in museums around the world, starting with the Berlin Museum. And Ishtar is the false goddess Semiramis. The Ishtar Gate is one image of the beast, and it is quite possible there may be many different images of Babylon that would be circulating, placed in museums all around the world. The Ishtar Gate and museums around the world, this Ishtar Gate, was a gate in the inner city of Babylon. It was constructed, and this is the real gate, it was constructed around 575 BC. And this was done by Nebuchadnezzar. And it was a part of a grand wall processional way. This processional way, it led into the city. And the walls were finished in glazed bricks. And these bricks are colored blue. And the color blue is significant. This blue color, it is a reference, a symbol of Ishtar. The German archaeologist Robert Koldewey, he is the one who led the excavation in Africa and Namibia. He led an excavation in 1904 to 1914 in Namibia and confiscated many artifacts and remains of the Babylonian Empire. And he did that with the authority of Germany. Because Germany, even today, Germany controlled Namibia. During the scramble for Africa, after the scramble for Africa, Germany controlled Namibia. And Germany is still in control of Namibia to this day. Even though the Namibian government is slowly regaining their autonomy. But Germany still has a grip on Namibia. So Robert Koldewey, the archaeologist, he is the one, him and his crew, his team, with the backing of Germany, stole Babylon, hijacked it, and placed it in Iraq, in the Middle East. And as time went on, Saddam Hussein came on the scene. And he started the rebuilding of Babylon. But he was interrupted. As time went on, now the World Monuments Fund has taken up that feat. And in 2010, they are still rebuilding Babylon. And again, the World Monuments Fund has the backing of the United States, Great Britain, and the Vatican, the three city-states. They're making sure that Babylon gets rebuilt in fulfillment of Revelations chapter 17, where it references the beast that once was, now is not, yet will come again. This is Babylon. On the Ishtar Gate, there is an inscription from Nebuchadnezzar. Within this inscription, there's something interesting, something that matches what is written in Revelations chapter 17, verse 8. This here is from the written inscription on the Ishtar Gate. And this is Revelation chapter 17, verse 8. Let's start here with our Revelations, which reads, "The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition." And now this is the important part here. This is what matches what is written on the inscription on the Ishtar Gate. And in Revelation it continues, "And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. And this word here, this wonder, this is the operative term. And Revelation goes on and says, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And this part yet is a future event. But they that dwell on the earth shall wonder when they behold the beast. This is important. This is in Revelation chapter 17, verse 8. And the inscription on the Ishtar gate, written by Nebuchadnezzar, it reads, in case any doubt remained about the gate's construction, there was an inscription in limestone in the voice of Nebuchadnezzar. And this is the inscription here from Nebuchadnezzar. I placed wild bulls and ferocious dragons in the gateways, and thus adorned them with luxurious splendor. And here's the important part here. So that the people might gaze on them in wonder. Let's read his sayings again. I placed wild bulls and ferocious dragons in the gateways, and thus adorned them with luxurious splendor, so that people might gaze on them in wonder. And Revelation says, they that dwell on the earth shall wonder when they behold the beast. And so we have this here, this match. We have this reference from Revelations. This is a reference to the inscription, to the Ishtar gate. Revelation is giving us a clue. And the Ishtar gate is one of the images of Babylon. Babylon is the beast, and the Ishtar gate is one of the images. And again, it is quite possible that there could be more than one image of Babylon, of separate parts of Babylon. And currently, there are three images. One is the Ishtar gate. The other one is the Lion of Babylon. And the third one is the Nimrod temple of Babylon. The Lion of Babylon is a representation of Nimrod. And there's supposed to be a statue behind the Lion of Babylon of Ishtar. But that statue is not there. The Nimrod temple, that is a temple in honor of Ishtar. And Ishtar is another name for Semiramis. And Semiramis is in disguise today in 2022 with a new name called Mary. So this is Babylon, the beast, and the image of the beast is already on display. There are three images currently: the Ishtar gate, the Lion of Babylon, and the Nimrod temple. Those are the three images. There could be more, but these are the three images that are available, readily available. But Revelation chapter 17, verse 8 gives us another clue, letting us know that Babylon is the empire that is being mentioned. Babylon is the empire that was, that is not, and will come. This is another evidence. This is a piece of evidence that let us know that Revelation is talking about Babylon. And this evidence, it is referring to the Ishtar gate. Again, Revelation is talking about wonder. The people wonder when they behold Babylon. Nimrod is mentioning the same thing. The people wondering when they behold Babylon, the Ishtar gate. Babylon is said to come again, and Babylon is under construction. It is going to rise again, it's going to exist again. But this future Babylon is going to be far more worse than the original Babylon, located in Namibia, southwest Africa, that is being hidden and covered up with a place name with flag. But this is Babylon, soon to come again.